No matter how successful we are as leaders, as planners, our experience is statistically irrelevant on the scale of all of the things that have happened to humanity. So if we just ask other people, that gives us an understanding not necessarily of what will happen next, but the range of the possible, the range of the plausible. Because when we think a couple of steps out about where we need to be, it becomes really obvious often what we need to do now, what we need to do next.
Hello and welcome to today's episode of the Keynote Curators Podcast. I'm Seth Deckman, your Keynote Curator, and our guest today is Jonathan Brill. Jonathan, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much. It's exciting to be here.
We're excited to have you, Jonathan. And for our viewers, thank you for joining us. Thank you for the first timers coming in and giving us a shot, and those that are continuing to come back. We appreciate your presence. Don't forget to like and subscribe for us. I admire your work. You are ubiquitous in my world. I see you everywhere, and really a life, a career of just such a broad scope and range of touching on every industry and every profession, all sizes and shapes. In general here, let's start with the big rocks and move down. With a futurist mindset, how can our viewers adjust or adopt that kind of futurist mindset in their daily lives to anticipate and adapt to shifts, whether it's in their industry or any profession that, is going to have them be prepared and ready to have success?
That's a great question. So let's talk just for a moment about futurists. So event planners hire a range of futurist speakers, and some of them talk kind of about the science fiction future, right? 10 years or more out. Some people talk about the technologies that are happening right now. What I focus on really is the 5-year future, not because should have like a 5-year plan, right? But because when you're thinking about the world 90 days from now, a year from now, 3 years from now, what you always wanted to do is be prepared for what happens next. And when you think, 5 years out, 2030, the year after Donald Trump, so much will be different, and yet we can know so much about it. And it's also just long enough for us to be able to pivot if the world isn't quite as we had assumed, and to reinvent. And so what I really recommend people do is think about that 5-year future. Some simple ways to do it. If you're younger, in your 20s or early 30s, ask people in their 50s, ask people in their 60s, ask your grandparents, what was the biggest change that happened over 5 years in their lives? What had happened that they didn't expect that was life-changing, when they were your age? Because the thing is that no matter how successful we are as leaders, as planners, our experience is statistically irrelevant on the scale of all of the things that have happened to humanity. So if we just ask other people, that gives us an understanding not necessarily of what will happen next, but the range of the possible, the range of the plausible. The second thing I would say, think about, in the events business, what does the world look like 5 years from now, right? A lot will change. We'll have virtual reality, we'll have AI, we'll have, a different economic environment. But we know the demographics. We know how old the people in the industry are. We know where the conference centers will be too expensive or too inexpensive because of the demographics in those areas, right? I live in San Francisco. Guess what? We've had a hard time. It's too expensive to run a show here. We could have known that 15 years ago and planned for it. We didn't. You can start to think about what can you automate using artificial intelligence. Yes, it's a couple of years out from really moving from something that's really fun on YouTube and that you can do cool demos with to something that's going to be in every enterprise. But the technology is here right now, and we can start to see the trajectory of what happens next. And so how do you take that step back and not ask, what can we imagine about the future, but what do we actually know? And what are the implications? And what are the small decisions I can take today to drive flexibility moving forward? What are the small decisions I can take today, knowing what happens next, to make sure that the downsides, that I'm clipping them off of my decision tree, and I'm taking all of those upsides, I'm taking all of those opportunities. Because when we think a couple of steps out about where we need to be, it becomes really obvious often what we need to do now, what we need to do next.
Yeah, I'm listening to you, and I think of our audience, and I know they're listening intently. It is a mindset, and you laid out some really clear steps. I think that whether it's meeting planners, which are most of our audience, and I'm talking to our audience members directly, what they think of as far as what Jonathan has said so far with regard to this mindset. I would take the case, Jonathan, you do dozens of speeches a year, and you interact with meeting professionals all the time. And not just meeting professionals, but all the vendors and the operators in that whole kind of conference ecosystem. And this is a group that has a lot of agility, and they
Mhm.
have to adapt, whether it's at the live event or an event, a weather eventuality happens, or
Mhm.
something in the conference center. I've had generators go out recently. So this is a group that I think has a
They get
natural inclination for this mindset, and it's already maybe baked into who they are. And I'd love to get our audience's thoughts on that. Comment and give us your background on your mindset or your ideas about that. But I want to take it a little bit further now, Jonathan. The one thing that everybody's talking about, that probably if it could be voted as thing of the year, it would be, which is artificial intelligence. In terms that would be relevant to our audience and our viewers, where do you see that technology playing out and being utilized in, let's say, in the events industry, the conference industry, in the next 5 years or so?
I think we're going to see a lot on the travel management, logistics management. We're going to see a lot of automation in that space. But what really excites me is that today, if you want to write software, you have to be a programmer. But as we move into the next couple of years, what we're going to see is that AI gets good enough to have conversations with us and start to build code for us to do the thing we want to do today. And so, you might think, hey, I just need to build a schedule for this stuff, or I've got so many emails. What are the most important things I need to pay attention to today? And you can ask it to start to look at those things for you. You can ask it to make a checklist based on everything you know about, all of the emails we've had to date about every conference. Like, help me make a checklist of all of the things I need to do and the timelines, and help me maybe back out, from the day we go live. What are all of the things I need to do today? These are things that event planners, oh my gosh, spend so much time just trying to get in their spreadsheet, right?
Yeah.
Trying to
Yeah.
track across all of the conversations with all of our vendors.
And
A
then I
lot
think there's other pieces of it, pardon me, Jonathan, where, I'd talk a little bit about one of the topics that's been, I don't know if it's trending, but that's come to the forefront and it's here to stay, is at events sustainability.
yeah,
And it could be something, I mean, like the type of name tags, all that plastic, the lanyards, water use,
right.
all that kind of stuff. Do you
Yeah.
see AI playing a role in that analysis and the strategy, even food and beverage costs, hotel distribution? I mean, I was at an event recently. It was a very large event, 29 hotels,
Mhm.
and they have somebody called the room czar. And I
Yeah.
did think later, like, God, it's one person. That what if they get ill, or goodness, they have
Yeah.
you know what I mean? So what do you think of that?
Well, I think that what we're talking about is how do we create redundancy in our systems, right? I don't think that, I think the number of people involved will expand because the potential quality will increase. The expectation of quality will increase. We know this from events over the last 30 years, right? The expectations just keep when new things become possible. When you start talking about the rooms are, how do you manage all the rooms across 29 hotels in Vegas? Like, oh my
Right.
gosh. Like, there is one person, and I guarantee you that's one person with some Excel spreadsheet somewhere hoping. That,
a lot of tabs and a lot of
that
yeah,
person's not going away. That
no,
person's not going away.
no.
But their ability to deal with the complexities, to deal with the things that happen in the moment, and to understand, if something happens over here in the, at the Win, what is the impact at the Venetian, right? Those things are going to become much easier to manage moving forward, to kind of simulate those types of challenges, and to understand in real time the downstream impacts for sure.
Jonathan, again, let's just stick with AI and get a little
Yeah.
bit more under the hood here. I use it, I think, on a very low level, but I use it for a couple of reasons. My team uses it. I want to have at least a generalist understanding, and
Yeah.
it has been helpful for me doing a little bit of analysis. My question is this: creativity, not the creativity like let's make an image that's artistic or music. It seems to me that our viewers would be interested in this. That there's an idea out there: AI is going to take your job, and I've also heard that AI is not going to take your job, but the person who has AI will take the person's job who doesn't have AI. Have meaning understanding, able to utilize it as a tool. That's a little bit of a thesis. But what I want to hear from you, A, your idea on that, but B, a little bit of the creative side to me as these low hanging fruit or redundancies or these tasks
Mhm.
that can get us locked up. What, when those are taken away, what happens typically is we're more efficient and then we just fill the vacuum or paint the canvas with more stuff to do. I see that's a real opportunity for the creative aspect, meeting professionals, business owners, small business owners, which are our audience. And I want to hear your responses to this as well. That
Mhm.
now they have an idea to sit and think a little bit more and be more creative and bring
Right.
that creativity to their work. What are your thoughts on that?
So what you're talking about is the price performance curve. So when something is expensive, you don't do a lot of it and it's exclusive, right? When it gets cheap, you do a lot of it and it's not exclusive. So what we're talking about are these things that used to be hard that none of us did, right? Are suddenly less expensive and easy to do. So I think about, 10 years ago, right? Having an app for your show was a like Ted did that. We don't do that, right?
Right.
And now everyone
Right.
has an app for their show. And it dramatically improves my experience as a customer. It makes it easy for you to change scheduling later in the event, all of that stuff. And so what we're going to find is that the complexity, the challenges of planning events are going to decrease. But I think that changes the types of events we do. First of all, maybe we do a lot more smaller, intimate events of high quality instead of big generic events of big generic quality,
Mass
right?
scale. Yeah.
Maybe we start in those mass scale events, we figure out we're able to start to customize it to bring birds of a feather together for dinner based who didn't know each other, right? To do all of those things that we want to do at some crazy thing like CES or IAPA. All of a sudden we can start to have that intimacy of a smaller 1,000-person event. That would be amazing, right?
Yeah.
Those are the things that become possible. And so it's not just
Right.
about having splashier shows and better graphics, and all that's going to happen too. But it's about really creating more value, more meaning, right? Moving it from trying to find the person you want to do the transaction with to creating that transformation for those people.
This is great stuff. Jonathan, I know Harvard Business Review has called you the world's leading transformation architect, and for good reason. You've been with Fortune 500 companies, consulting them, leading them. I mean, not as necessarily the CEO, but leading them in a direction towards the future and understanding all the aspects of the best ways to perform and utilize and optimize technologies and kind of how to framework it and
Mhm.
contextualize it all. What's something, and it's Microsoft, it's Samsung, it's the US government, and on and on. What's something you're working on right now, you personally, that
Mhm.
really excites you?
So for me, it's a lot of our work. I'm working with a major software company right now on AI and how it changes the nature of the firm. And we've done a study with 2.7 million managers to understand, okay, well, how can we thrive in times of change? What are those things that allow each of us as leaders to take advantage of the disruption before us? Because one of the things I can tell you is that the amount of change is not decreasing. And it comes down to four basic things that we've seen consistently across leaders who thrive in disruption versus those who don't. And the good news is you're going to like these.
Great.
The question is,
Audience, take notes.
in a world of artificial intelligence, these things that, you know, organizational psychologists have been talking about for 20 years, right? Psychological safety and being more innovative and all this stuff. They've been really hard for companies to do because they haven't had the infrastructure to manage them. Suddenly, AI gives us that infrastructure to manage it. And so we're going to find that to thrive in the future, companies are going to have to be dramatically more agile. They're going to have to be dramatically more inventive. And we know that the characteristics of those types of organizations from our research break down into four basic categories. Do you create an environment where people leverage help? Because in situations where people leverage more help from their peers than their peers, they tend to do dramatically better in times of change. The second is unexpected connections. And man, as event organizers, we get this, right? It's always the person you weren't expecting to meet at the event that changes your life. It's rarely the person you were, right? You're going there for serendipity. So if we leverage help and we ask for a lot more help, and we go into situations where we make unexpected connections, what we're doing is we're dramatically increasing our potential. We're dramatically increasing what's possible for us. And the fascinating thing, and this is the thing that event planners are going to get that most managers might not, is that when that potential increases, right, you get good chaos. You get good
Yeah.
hard things happening.
Right. Right.
But you've got to be able to think in a first principles basis about what's actually going on, right? You can't just use like standard operating procedures in non-standard times. It doesn't work, right? So how are you going to control the chaos? So we've talked about leveraging help and unexpected connections. We've talked about controlling chaos. And the thing is, when you walk into uncertain situations and you're comfortable that you're going to walk out of them comfortably, safely, with a better outcome, you stop focusing on all the KPIs, all the things in front of you. Yes, those are important. But when the world changes, there are all kinds of new pools of value, all kinds of new opportunities that no one else is focused on because they're just trying to get through that moment. And when you step back and you take the time to know what's missing, to see where those opportunities are. Maybe we thought we were going to do a big keynote, but it's time for a fireside chat. Maybe we thought we were going to do that big dinner, but something happened. The restaurant flooded out, right? So now we're going to do a whole bunch of like picnic baskets, somewhere else on the top of the building. There are all these opportunities perpetually in the chaos of running large events to create something better when you take
Yeah.
the time to know what's missing instead of just focusing on what's there.
Yeah.
And so when you leverage help and unexpected connections, you control chaos and you know what's missing, you have this really great consultant acronym, luck, but you also have a really easy way to talk to your people, to talk to your vendors, to talk to your partners about how to deal with that uncertainty, how to deal with the change. And when we
Yeah.
do that, we move from just asking what happens next to being able to create it.
That's awesome. And, it strikes me that it's going back to the beginning of the conversation, the ability to have that mindset, because if you can identify or be present enough to say, oh, there's some chaos going on here, or let's call it healthy tension or whatever semantics you want to use. And if you can recognize and say, oh, here it is. Okay, now there's opportunity here. We can be creative, be with it, and not only be with it, but harness part of it. That's it sounds to me like the mindset that we talked about. But what I love is the second one, which is the unexpected connections. Because I talk to my kids about this. You never know who you're sitting next to.
Yeah.
It's a little bit of a blend of don't judge a book by its cover, but be open. And you had said earlier, birds of a feather. But
Yeah.
what if there was an aspect of leveraging AI some way, the attendee list,
Mhm.
their their titles or their job descriptions or whatever they are, and on purpose put, I'm making it up here, put the plumber with the bond lawyer,
Yeah.
put the brain surgeon with
Yeah.
the tennis coach,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
kind of
And that
it's a little bit forced, but have that because you never know, right?
Well, you never know. And that is exactly the kind of thing that AI would have been impossible to do 2 years ago. The AI makes easy, right? The new Chat GPT search makes it really easy to find all of these people, tools like Perplexity. So these things are happening in real time. One of the things I love doing, it always blows people's minds, is I like bringing some poor person up onto stage and saying, here's what actually happens. Because what we're talking about when we talk about what I call strategic luck is shifting network dynamics, right? If one person knows what you need, then that better be the right person. But if everyone knows what you need, likelihood goes up by like 2,000 in a room of 2,000, except it actually goes up by 2,000 times all of the people they know.
Sure. Right. Yeah.
So you're moving very quickly to a world
Yeah.
where it's all, if you ask the right question and you make it easy to solve the problem, you create a situation where it is almost inevitable that the person will get what they need. So I was at SAP Insider a couple of months ago, and I brought someone up on stage in front of 2,000 CIOs. And the person was so convinced that they could not get help with what they needed. And I asked the room 500 responses.
Right.
The crazy thing is this guy's from Ohio, is he sits back down, 2 rows up from him is another guy from Ohio who's
Of
already
course.
solved
Right.
this problem and says, "Hey, let's get coffee when we go home." The solutions to our hardest challenges are so much closer than we imagine. If
And
other
this
people
relates,
know other
yeah.
ways of efforts.
No, that's a brilliant illustration because this now relates to the first point where it's almost like you're undoing the silo, right? I don't know the exact words
I'm
you
doing
said, but
exactly what we're doing.
yeah. So it's ask for assistance, ask for help. Nobody's helpless, but have that culture where it's not just within your department, but it could be the bond lawyer asking the tennis coach, do you know anything about, somebody that or somebody that could. And if you have that environment, that ambiance, that culture,
Yeah.
that it's natural for people to do that, then it flows through all the other 4 points the 4 points that you eliminate. That's a great example. And they had coffee. And the ironic thing is the guy was in the same zip code there or
It's
zip
right
code.
right down the street. They met in Las Vegas.
Yeah,
You know?
that,
Well,
that's
and
really cool.
this is the
And
thing that AI makes possible, right? Is
yeah,
it's a way to cut red tape because it can look at all of the data, right? It can look at all of the Zoom transcripts in your firm and say, Bob needs to talk to Jane. Jane needs to talk to Sally. They all need to get together. They can all do that on a meeting on Tuesday. Those types of things that take weeks to figure out in a company are going to start to happen instantaneously. That's what
yeah.
excites me.
That's great. And so you're working with this large software company and it's what is it, surveyed or researched 2.7 million managers that you couldn't
7
get to
million
3 million, Jonathan?
working on it. Working on it.
Okay. Come on.
I figure 2.7 is statistically relevant, but we'll try and bump it to 3.
Come on. I mean, we're all trying to the largest room in the house is room for improvement. I mean, come on. Let's see if we can get there.
Yeah.
We'll see. So, again, I just want to share with our viewers, our listeners, thank you so much for continuing to stay with us. You can see our guest, someone like Jonathan Brill, who not only is an extraordinary keynote speaker and delivers dozens of keynotes all over the world year after year, but has really unique, one-of-a-kind insights that can make an immediate, lasting difference for your organization and your industry. Share, like us, love us, subscribe, continue to spread the word. I heard a phrase, Jonathan, that your network really is your net worth. And I think that that goes hand in hand with what you just exemplified with bringing this gentleman up on stage to solve the problem, right?
It's
Pretty,
all of the it's all about love, right? How much love can we give? How can we use technology? How can we use events to
yeah.
allow people to love on one another?
Yeah,
That's
I'll tell you, I didn't think we'd be quoting Burt Bacharach today, but what the world needs now is love, sweet love, you know? I mean, leave it to Jonathan Brill, ladies and gentlemen, to bring in Burt Bacharach to a conversation about artificial intelligence. I mean, I think we've crossed the Rubicon, ladies and gentlemen. Get your helmets on.
absolutely. We're yeah, in a world of technology, nothing is more important than to be human.
And you're probably well aware of him. He's been a guest on one of our early episodes, one of our first episodes, Tim Sanders, who wrote the bestseller, Love is the Killer App. You, the royal you, meeting planner, futurist, science fiction futurist or not, chairman, board member, you can have all the chat GPT inhabited in your body and be able to leverage all this technology. But if it lives in a vacuum or lives in a silo, what's the point? I
Absolutely.
mean, there's no real reason to do it. So I'm just going to finish on this last one. We're coming to the end of our episode here, end of this podcast. Last kind of encouragement. AI is now heavily woven into people's minds. Everybody's at a different place of understanding and using it. What would in the shorter, nearer term, what would you say? Encouraging words, inspiring words, or just giving people a healthy way to frame it, not get overwhelmed and not get stressed out about what they don't know?
So the first thing is you can't catch up. Like this is my job. And I'm always like, there's a new thing. And and I've got a whole crew of people who I have conversations with every day, every week. What's the new thing you learned? What's the new thing you learned? Stay ahead of this stuff. It's moving so fast. I mean, we're putting something like $500 billion into this year,
Hmm.
right? To give a sense of scale, that's more than the US spends at the city, state, federal level on all of the roads and all of the bridges in the United States. We're spending a tremendous amount of time and effort on this technology right now. You can't catch up. So don't try and do that. But do play. Do experiment. Do see what works, what doesn't. Because the things that were impossible yesterday will suddenly become possible. In January of 2024, I took the outline for my next book, which is about many of these topics we talked about today, and put it into ChatGPT, and it created complete garbage. I did the same thing in July of this year. And if you read any page, but not the page before or the page after, it was pretty good. I did in October of this year, and it spat out a book. It wasn't a book I would publish. If my high schooler wrote it, sophomore in college wrote it, I'd be like, it's pretty good. Every week, every month, new things become possible. And so the only thing you can do really is play and experiment because
Yeah.
at the end of the day, this technology is not about case studies. It's not about you can do this with it. It's about behaviors. It's about experimenting with it, seeing what's possible because the rules, they're totally open right now. There's so much potential. There's so much opportunity to define what you are going to do with it, what you are going to make with it, how you are going to become. So it's your choice. Are you going to become closed off? Or are you going to open yourself to the world? Because more is possible today than at any time in human history.
Yeah.
The future is yours.
That's great. I mean, you saying at the beginning, you're never going to catch up. I felt kind of my temperature just dialing down a little bit, and the tension loosening up because, I'm having fun with it, but it's in the context of catching up or I need to know more. And there's like this self-imposed pressure. So thank you for that, Jonathan. A little bit of
So,
relief.
so many of the things that you can do with it today, if you're an expert, will become easy to do tomorrow, right? Because they'll put the technology in place, the layers in place that replace the expertise, the technical expertise. So the question isn't what's possible today, it's how to think about this technology in your business and your life to open up potential, to explore new areas, to spend more time doing what you want and less time kind of checking the boxes. I mean, I love
Yeah.
checking boxes, but you know what I mean.
Yeah, no, it's important, but it's like, why are you checking the boxes? To what end? And what
Yeah.
does it yield for you? And I think that's what you're pointing to. Go out and have
Yeah.
fun and explore and make it an adventure and live your life.
Yeah.
This isn't the end. This is just part of the whole thing.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Well, Jonathan, I just can't thank you enough for being with us. I know you make a big difference and you do great work, whether it's in the executive consulting that you do or with Fortune 500 companies, and you're all over the world, more from the stage on the keynotes and the smaller groups and some pop-up sessions we talked about offline a little bit. Just thank you for the difference you're making and for the difference you're going to be making moving into the future. And for our listeners, thank you again. As I say, like us, love us, share. We'd love to hear your thoughts. We'd love to hear what you're doing with artificial intelligence, with ChatGPT, with your events, what's working, what isn't working. Join the conversation. Thanks for joining the Keynote Curators Podcast, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you, Seth. It's wonderful to meet everybody in the audience.